Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Wingecarribee Shire Council on Wednesday the 21st of September. If I remind everyone to turn off their mobile phones or put them on mute. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders both past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today or watching. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interests of the people of the Wingecarribee Shire Council area and to act faithfully and impartially, carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declaration of conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. The past few weeks at the international, national and local level has seen some sad and tragic events. Vale, Queen Elizabeth II. Most Australians have only lived under one sovereign, and the most recent census data has shown in the Wingecarribee 21% of the Shire's residents are over 70. The passing of Queen Elizabeth II is mourned with profound sadness, respect and gratitude for her selfless service. I would ask that as a local civic acknowledgement for a remarkable life, all in the chamber rise with me in observing a minute's silence. Thank you. The Buxton tragedy. A heartbreaking tragedy occurred on the evening of 6 September when 5 young residents from villages just to the north of our Shire lost their lives in a horror crash. The site of the incident was within the boundary of Wingecarribee Shire Council, and a large number of flowers, notes and expressions of grief have been left at the site. Council has been liaising with the local state member for Wallandilly Shire Council, the principal of Picton High School, and at the appropriate time, together with the above, will liaise with the families. In the meantime, with the assistance of the Red Cross, the memorial will be respectfully cleared and stored for future decisions. My heart goes out to those who were so quickly on the scene, and words can't describe the impact of the tragedy on so many people. I would ask all in the chamber to join with me in a minute's silence for Lily Van Der Pute, Summer Williams, Gabby McLean, Therese Pritchard and Antonio De Sisto. Thank you. The late Velma Mackay, OAM. I joined the family and friends of the late Velma Mulcahy, OAM, to celebrate her life at St Andrew's Catholic Church, Little Bay, following her passing on the 22nd of August at her home in Mittagong. Auntie Val was a highly respected and listened to elder in our Indigenous community, who lived a full and rich life, and whose wisdom will be sadly missed. A local memorial service will be held on 15 October between 10 and 12 at the Aboriginal Cultural Centre on Rainbow Road, Mittagong. I would ask all in the chamber to join me with a minute's silence for Velma Mulcahy, OAM. Thank you. Apologies. There are obviously no apologies. Minutes, I'm sorry. Minutes of the previous meeting. I would move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on Wednesday, 17 August 2022 be adopted as a correct recording of the proceedings of the meeting and declare that carried. General Manager, declarations of interest.
There are no declarations, Mr. May.
Thank you. There is one administrator minute. I circulated it on Monday night. I'm not proposing to read it as it's been in the public domain. If you could pull the recommendations up though, if you don't mind. It relates to the General Manager's performance review. I would move the recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 4 as outlined on page 3 of the minute and declare that carried. In doing that, I haven't at this stage thanked the two independent who assisted, Ms Kelly Hayes and Ms Christine Hawkins AM, as there's still more work to do as we proceed to work on the performance indicators for the following 12 months. We now move to the matters listed on the business paper. 8.1, New South Wales Public Spaces Charter. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. Park will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. May, so this report relates to the New South Wales Public Open Space Charter, which has been prepared by the Department of Planning and Environment to guide planning and delivery of high quality public spaces and to support, I guess, meaningful place-based planning. The Department are encouraging government and agencies, so including councils, to become signatories to the Charter, which provides access to the Charter, obviously, but also a community of practice and one-on-one support from the Department. So the report ultimately recommends that Council become a signatory to the Charter and that the General Manager sign the Charter on behalf of Council.
Thank you, Mr May. Mr Park will introduce this item, and in doing so we just need to draw to your attention that item 1, or recommendation 1 in 8.2, it appears that some of the wording from that recommendation was omitted from the report, so Mr Park's provided additional wording which he'll cover in his introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr May, this report relates to a planning proposal to amend Clause 7.2 of the Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan. I guess by way of background, there is an anomaly in the Wingecarribee LEP which creates an overlap of the clauses, which ultimately results in different approval pathways for dual occupancy. So developers or mum and dad developers can undertake subdivision of dual occupancies as complying development, but not as a development application. These changes will allow those developments to occur as under a development application process, which supports neighbour notification and appropriate consultation with the local community. The planning proposal was publicly exhibited in accordance with the gateway requirements. We received one submission on the planning proposal, albeit it wasn't related to the proposed changes to the LEP. So the report ultimately recommends that the planning proposal be finalised and endorsed and finalised in accordance with section 3.36 of the Act. The additional wording that provided outlines the exact wording of the changes to the clause.
So the additional wording relates to what's in the report itself on pages 36 and 37 to make it a concise document. Yeah,
so it's actually producing the exact wording of the clause in the recommendation itself.
Thank you very much. In relation to item 8.2, I would move the amended officer's recommendation, if you can. Yeah. In the future, I think we only need one that, and then we can do 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks a bit. If it's possible to clean that up for the minutes, if you don't mind. So, item 1 as is, and then 2 as is blue on the screen. Yeah, I think we have to. Yes.
Sorry, Mr May, just to assist. So if you don't mind moving the screen down a little bit. Thanks, Michelle. So 1 should read that the planning proposal to amend clause 7.2 of the Wingecarribee Local Environment Plan 2010 to the following wording be endorsed, comma, and then remove the 2 up the top there. And then the wording should be reflected as per the blue text, which is drawn from the report itself. And then number 2 would remain the same, Mr May.
Okay, thanks for that. I would move what's on the screen, 1, 2, and you scroll up if you don't mind. It's still, we've got so many 1s and 2s in there. That 2's got to be removed. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, you've got to go off the screen to do it. Okay. just for the benefit of those in the gallery or at home, we use, or the administration uses, what is on the screen for the minutes. So it's very important that we get it right. Do you want us to come back to it, or? Look, I think everyone understands the fact that that 2's got to be removed. It's just very elusive. Done it. Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, declare that carried. Item 8.3, the planning proposal for land at Villiers and Hill Roads, Moss Vale.
Thank you, Mr. May. Back to Mr. Park. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report relates to a planning proposal to amend the minimum lot sizes of land in Villiers and Hill Road in Moss Vale. By way of background, the land adjoins the Chelsea Gardens and Kumunji urban release area, and in finalising the planning proposal for the Chelsea Gardens urban release area, the council didn't take the opportunity to clean up the lot sizes around the new residential area, and what that resulted in is an anomaly on certain areas of the minimum lot size, and this planning proposal just seeks to rectify that anomaly to ensure the lot sizes are consistent. The planning proposal has exhibited in accordance with the gateway requirements, and no submissions were received. It was considered by the local planning panel on the 7th of September, and the panel supported the staff's recommendation to endorse the planning proposal and finalise it in accordance with section 3.36 of the Act.
Thank you very much. In relation to item 8.3, the planning proposal for Villiers and Hill Streets, Moss Vale, I would move the officer's recommendation, which is in effect, it has been endorsed by the panel, 1 and 2 on page 59 of the business paper, and declare that carried. The next item relates to land in Oldbury Street, Moss Vale.
Thank you, Mr. May, and back to Mr. Park.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report relates to a proponent-initiated planning proposal to facilitate a 3-lot residential subdivision on land in Oldbury Street in Berrima. So the report provides the details of the assessment of the planning proposal, which was ultimately considered unsuitable for a number of reasons, particularly in relation to the lack of strategic merit, as well as some of the site-specific constraints of the land. So the matter was considered by the local planning panel again on the 7th of September, where the panel supported the staff recommendation to not support the planning proposal. In providing their advice, the panel recommended that any review of minimum lot sizes in this area should be undertaken as part of a broader strategic review rather than through a spot rezoning process.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why the reference to the panel's advice, the last paragraph, where it says be considered by council as part of a future broad strategic review.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thank you very much. In relation to item 8.4, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 92 of the business paper and declare that carried. The South Eastern and Tablelands Regional Plan. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. Before I hand over to Mr. Park, the draft South Eastern Tablelands Regional Plan has caused much comment and concern amongst the community, in particular around the dwelling targets and the fact that the published dwelling targets are out of step with Council's adopted local housing strategy. I'll ask Mr. Park to outline the submission and also the conversations and meetings we've held with local community groups over the last couple of days and the most recent advice from the Department of Planning we received this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. So, Mr. May, this report relates to the draft South Eastern Tablelands Regional Plan 2041, which is currently on public exhibition. So the regional plan sets, as its name suggests, the regional planning framework and guides planning, land use planning throughout the region. Look, the regional plan is an update to the 2036 regional plan and provides a lot of really good strategic planning framework for the region. It sets out a number of key land use themes as well as specific objectives and actions to implement the vision for the region. And generally, Council are largely supportive of what the regional plan is trying to achieve. I think our submission raises some concerns about some of the specifics around how they seek to implement, and I think it's, in discussing it with the Department of Planning, it's largely around that clarification and the need for the regional plan to be really specific about what the intent of some of the actions are. And in speaking with the community over recent weeks, I think that clarification would resolve a lot of the concerns in the community as well, because what it sets out to achieve versus some of the specific wording are sometimes a little bit of conflict. So our submission encourages the department to refine some of the commentary to ensure that the intent is clear in the plan. The biggest concern that Council had with the regional plan was, as the General Manager mentioned, in relation to the dwelling targets. So the regional plan produced a dwelling target for the Wingecarribee Shire of 13,000 dwellings, which is not only inconsistent with Council's housing strategy, but also inconsistent with the Department's own forecast for how many dwellings are needed for the region. So we are confident that we can accommodate the proposed population growth within the areas identified within the local housing strategy, and we have real concerns that the dwelling target of 13,000 dwellings undermines the local housing strategy, and it's really important for the regional plan to reinforce the housing strategy to ensure that we accommodate growth in a way that's in keeping with the community's expectations. And we have, as the General Manager mentioned, had a number of meetings with different community groups over recent days and who have voiced similar concerns about particularly around the dwelling targets. We have made representations already directly to the department, and as of probably 2 o'clock this afternoon, I've received written confirmation from the department that the dwelling target in the regional plan was put in there in error, and it should be 9,500 dwellings, not the 13,000 dwellings, which is, I think, a really important step in the right direction, and they've confirmed that that will be rectified in the final plan. So the report outlines, I guess, what Council's concerns are and really emphasises the need for the regional plan to support and reinforce the housing strategy rather than undermine it. So a copy of our Council submission will be made available with the minutes for the meeting and will be submitted to the Department of Planning by the end of the week.
Was this verbal or in writing, the mistake?
Both, initially verbally, and we sought clarification in writing, and I've since received in writing from the regional office that number will be rectified in the final plan, as well as providing a link to the department's forecast website, which does change over time. And the nature of population and dwelling forecasts is they are the best guess. Shouldn't say guess, it is a science. They are the best modelled forecast at a point in time, but they do change over time, and so this will be providing link to a website that is regularly updated rather than a static number.
Look, everyone makes mistakes, but this was a whopper, and it's caused unnecessary angst in the community, and it's resulted in several meetings so the members of the community can better understand what the Council's position is. As I understand it, what was proposed gave potential for developers to weaponise the regional plan against the council's housing strategy, which has been well thought out and which we're investing a lot of time and money and resources in making sure on this occasion it's done properly. So it's good news that it was an error, but I hope you told them the angst it's caused and the time that's been spent. Better understanding. Well, we couldn't understand I couldn't, you couldn't understand how they got that figure, and the community couldn't understand. If I could also thank the community members who have had the meetings with council and who have made submissions, and could I also thank our local members who were both caught by surprise with this, and who have been very supportive of the council in making representations directly to the Minister, as I understand it. That's your understanding too? Yeah. So, look, the response, but we can't take our eye off the ball. We've got to make sure that we continue. And I'm going to continue with an amendment I've got to the recommendation. And I'm happy with 1, 2 and 3. And I acknowledge the work of you and your team in this, but I'd move a number 4. Council reaffirm its commitment to the Wingecarribee local housing strategy that provides an evidence-based framework to meet the housing needs of the local community, and oppose, not support, any spot rezoning of rural lands that could undermine the local housing strategy. So, with 1, 2, 3 and 4, I declare that carried. In declaring it carried, I think it's very, very important that we lay the foundations in everything we're doing, that the council maintains the housing strategy. That's it. I think it needs to be very clear to anybody who wants to come in and look at spot rezonings of rural lands. Don't waste your time during the administration of the council. Next item is 8.3. I'm sorry, 8.6, Barrel Car Parking Contribution Scheme, page 154.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. Park's final report. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report relates to a proposed car parking contribution scheme for the Barrel Town Centre. So at the council meeting of 17th of August, council resolved to investigate options that would enable new development to pay a monetary contribution in lieu of providing all of its car parking on site. So, Mr. May, as you're acutely aware, car parking and particularly providing parking on site can present a significant barrier to development, and a significant barrier in some instances to realising council's own objectives of supporting appropriate development and revitalising our town centres. So the report provides an overview of the different contributions mechanisms, and ultimately recommends that we prepare a template voluntary planning agreement. So rather than a contributions plan for car parking, which has significant limitations and limits council's ability to levy the development contributions under section 7.12 of the Act. So it recommends that we prepare a template voluntary planning agreement, and that contribution, so that voluntary planning agreement operates the same way as a car parking contribution plan would, whereas where a developer can't meet all of their parking on site, they pay a monetary contribution for any shortfall in parking, and that contribution goes towards providing consolidated car parking within the town centre. As part of that, we're also recommending that we prepare amendments to the development control plan, which would enable and essentially call up and provide that option for car parking to be met via a monetary contribution. The report recommends that we prepare the draft voluntary planning agreement and bring it back to council, and we publish a contribution rate which will be indexed in accordance with the normal contributions plans.
the way I read the report, it won't be a normal car parking contribution plan, it'll be a voluntary contributions plan, because if you're going to use some of the parking in the Station Street area, it would be to the advantage of the developer, not the community. Is that a fair comment?
What the report recommends is that we don't just base a contribution rate on the Station Street car parking, because council needs to continue to increase parking in our centres, and by allowing a developer to meet their car parking requirements through all, I'm going to call it the cheap spaces, the at-grade car parking spaces, it undermines council's ability to increase supply generally. So it recommends a mix of both multi-level and at-grade parking to establish a contribution rate for car parking in the centre.
Mm. Look, I was being carefully choosing my words in relation to the at-level car parking, because it would be at a discount rate when it shouldn't be, and I think this is this should be the impetus to getting some of those big sites in Bowral underway, and encouragement to the owners to do something, because there are too many empty sites in Bowral. So I'm very happy to move the recommendation in relation to item 8.6 on page 154, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and declare that carried. The next one is 9.1, Committee Advisory Committee Structure.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. David Ackroyd will introduce this item. Mr. Ackroyd was engaged to assist the Group Manager, Community and Corporate Services, Ms. Lidgard, in undertaking this work. Thank you.
General Manager, Mr. Mayor. Some background to start with. The review commenced in late 2021 with a report presented to Council in December 2021. The review proposed a structure that would facilitate active community involvement in high-level strategic policy development through the creation of 5 community reference panels, supplemented by the establishment of a number of action and/or working groups. The review also considered the ongoing role of the Section 355 committees that manage several public halls and facilities across the towns and villages of Wingecarribee Shire. Council resolved that the review be placed on public exhibition from the 10th of December 2021 to the 28th of February 2022. On the 20th of July 2022, Council further requested that a report be prepared for this September meeting outlining the structures that could be put in place to enable the community to be involved in local decision making and be engaged in projects in their place. A total of 37 submissions were made to the initial review, some making comment on both sections of the report, the advisory committees and the Section 355 committees. In addition to the public exhibition process, 3 additional workshops exploring community engagement options and seeking feedback on the review were held in August 2022. These involved 22 representatives drawn from the Section 355 committees, 12 representatives drawn from Council's former advisory committees, and 12 senior council staff drawn from across council's operations. Overall, the feedback from the public exhibition process and from the former members of the community advisory committees was consistent. There was support for the model proposed in the review, with constructive feedback surrounding the need for the infrastructure panel. There was undoubtedly a thirst to continue to engage with Council despite clear concerns with the former advisory committee model, which was clearly seen as a model that community members were simply informed of what Council proposes to do, as opposed to being actively involved in shaping the future through engagement and high-level policy development. Some concerns were raised by the senior staff workshop in relation to duplicating the old model of the advisory committees. However, the model proposes a focus on genuine community engagement in two-way conversations. And best practice would clearly suggest that this model would foster a growing trust with the local community as Council moves forward. The concept of active engagement is a common theme in many professional disciplines, ranging from town planning and engineering to community and recreation services. Indeed, Council is in an ideal position as it prepares to review the Community Strategic Plan to enable the community reference panels as proposed to be actively engaged in the development of the new Community Strategic Plan and the subsequent reviews of high-level strategies and plans as they become due for renewal. The model of engagement proposed has changed only slightly from the review presented in December, with the deletion of the infrastructure panel. Having said that, infrastructure will need to be an important consideration for the remaining 4 panels when they meet from time to time. The model itself will not be sufficient to fulfil all Council's community engagement obligations. Indeed, the ongoing use of Your Say, surveys and other engagement tools as listed in your community engagement policy will need to be continued and evolve into the future, where it is likely that the use of electronic means of engagement will grow. In addition, there is likely to be a need for additional training of staff to build skills in more advanced tools of engagement practice. Moving on to the Section 355 Facility Management Committees. The recommendation in the review presented to Council in December 2021 was to dissolve the Section 355 committees while still engaging volunteers in oversight of the use of the halls. This recommendation was largely based on concerns raised by the Office of Local Government in relation to safety and financial administration and a clear move away from the utilisation of Section 355 committees across metropolitan Sydney. There was overwhelming disagreement with this recommendation, both from the submissions subsequent to the public exhibition process and in the workshop held in August. The reasons for this were many. Include the clear difference between metropolitan Sydney and a country council from a geographic perspective, the potential loss of volunteer involvement in the management of local facilities and services, the capacity of council to manage halls from afar and a reduction in customer service, and the cost to council of adopting this approach. There was, however, general agreement in the need to introduce the centralised booking system and reduce some of the onerous red tape for both Council and the Section 355 committees. As a result, the review now recommends a different approach, commencing with the trial of a centralised booking system at the Canyon Lee community facility. This will mean that the fees for the hire of the facility will be deposited with Council, and there will be a need to establish a mechanism whereby the Section 355 Committee will have access to funds to enable them to undertake minor upgrades and respond to reactive community requests. Port Stephens Council is currently undertaking a similar programme and has introduced a centralised booking system together with the issue of petty cash cards for their Section 355 committees. The bookable system, which was purchased by Council many months ago, is utilised by many councils across New South Wales and has received highly positive reviews. Wagga Wagga Council, for example, is now extending use of the bookable system across a number of council functions well beyond its public halls. Wagga Wagga does not make use of the Section 355 concept. The financial risks of maintaining the Section 355 committees across the individual halls is reasonably small, especially when weighed against the potential of, for example, the loss of volunteer involvement in the halls, the potential increased cost to council of managing the facilities, and the potential reduction in customer service and responsiveness. Should the bookable trial prove successful, bookable could be expanded across the hall network reasonably quickly, providing easy access to electronic booking online and simplifying the number of accounting procedures that currently take place between the hall committees and council, especially in relation to GST and other financial issues. This in itself could address the financial concerns raised by the Office of Local Government. This change will also provide for maintaining an ongoing healthy volunteer involvement in the local committees, in local communities, a benefit which should not be underestimated. And in closing, I would like to thank all the people that I've spoken to over the last 10 months or so for their honest and frank feedback. Very frank at times, I would say. But again, it's issues brought back to council which I need to report back to you and consider in the final recommendations. Thank you.
General Manager, who do I ask my questions to? Mr. Ackroyd or?
We can start with Mr. Ackroyd.
Has Mr. Ackroyd been warned? I've got a ton of questions.
He's prepared.
You're prepared?
Yeah. Well, I will answer them as best I can.
Yeah. Look, I understand the importance of volunteering. Much of what a council provides, it couldn't provide without the generosity of time of volunteers, and you never poke your finger in the eye of a volunteer. Having said that, I have some real worries about recommendation 3 and 4, which I'll come back to, because I'd rather deal with 1 and 2 first. I'm all for the whole of council decision making. In other words, some councillors shouldn't know more than others. Everybody deserves to know the same. And in many councils that does not happen. And Winchicarabi, I believe, was a prime example. I think that the terms of reference that are proposed will encourage a return to that process. And I'm not happy to formalise it. In addition, I have a view that reference panels are very, very important at the ground floor of decision making. In other words, in influencing the people who are writing the reports. Councillors would make their informed decisions based on the reports in front of them. And this model, to me, would make that impossible. So I'm sorry I didn't have more to say earlier in the first round, but I've been mulling over this and, you know, listening to the public inquiry and what was going on here. I think it would just feed more of the same further down the track. And, you know, many people in the early days came to speak to me about what was going on with the old panels they had here, and how the staff, in effect, was a fait accompli, as you say. They're my words, not yours. You use different words. And that the councillors, or some councillors, dominated. Now, Winchicarabi is not the only place where that happens. But I'm just not happy with having councillors on these panels. In 2024, when the council returns, if they want to turn that around, they can. But my objective in the next couple of years is to lay the foundations for proper, genuine community consultation. And I believe the people best served to do that are the staff in the first instance. Obviously, the governing body makes the decisions further down the track, but it's very important that we don't talk at community reference panels, we talk to them. And that's going to be a challenge for the staff too. But that's the dream. And so, have they told you, what, you have any comment?
I do, yeah. I would say that I had considerable angst in actually bringing back the councillors into the reference panel model. And that was based really on the feedback from the Community Advisory Committee members, who had clearly had some fairly traumatic experiences in the advisory committees themselves. So I would say in two minds as to, you know, whether councillors should be brought back into the system. However, as council moves forward, then I guess it becomes an issue of local democracy and including councillors more and more into the, you know, that sort of the work of council. But I can understand very easily the concerns that you're putting forward there in relation to the domination of the councillors, which was in the old committee system, I understand, quite overwhelming really, and unmanageable at times for some of the staff, I think.
But I'm told it wasn't only the councillors. It was the staff.
Yeah, that's right, and I do reflect that. In I guess when the staff are attending with councillors, there is pressure on them. That should be resisted clearly from the from senior staff, and so. Personally, like I said, I'm still in two minds. But in the transition process towards the return of the councillors, I can quite understand actually moving to a staff-led model in terms of the reference panels, and following on from that, then clearly it will be a council decision as to.
Well, I'm not even for a staff-led model. I'm for a community-led model.
Okay.
And I think the only way we're going to do that is for a new era in the council, and I don't have the same hesitancy. I'm removing them, the councillors. I'm happy for the staff, but I see my role here is to lay the foundations for a community-led council that's open, honest and transparent, and I'm doing my best in that regard. If the councillors in 2024, when they come back, want to bring themselves back onto the panels or have some other system, good luck to them. But while I'm here, I just want to try and make sure, under the leadership of the General Manager, that these panels are genuine community-based input at the ground floor before the staff head off with their professional views. I'm not saying that the staff, that everything's going to be honky-tonk. Obviously there's going to be a difference between professional views and what's affordable and what's achievable and what's allowable, but let's give it a go first.
Yep.
And not build an expectation for the incoming council that immediately at the first meeting they're going to divvy up the panels, because will be the first bad sign. So look, I feel strongly about this one.
Yeah, yeah. Are you suggesting that you're not suggesting that the community members actually chair the meetings? They will be chaired by
No,
staff,
I'm more than happy for council staff to chair the meetings, and no doubt the General Manager will issue guidelines for how that's done respectfully, where community members are not spoken yet. It's genuine community consultation. This is a chance for a quantum leap between the administration of the council and the community it serves, and I say don't miss the opportunity. And that's where I'm coming from.
Within one of the attachments to the report, there is a context in terms of reference for the panels, and that does reinforce that need to listen and engage in a two-way process and be respectful of the community members.
And similar to you, the feedback I got from the old groups was it wasn't respectful.
Indeed.
And sometimes in a room, if you have a councillor with a staff member, the staff member can be compromised if they're not trained and versed to speak up for their own professionalism. And there's clear evidence that was not happening here. So look, I don't want to go on about this, but did anyone tell you the amendments I was suggesting?
Yeah, I've been advised of those,
Okay. I'm not going to ask you whether you agree or disagree, because you say you're sitting on the fence, so I'm happy to make the decision. In relation to, that's items 1 and 2, if you can call them up. But look, when we get to number 4, the Section 355 committees, it seems to me from the guidelines that the previous council issued, the staff weren't even complying with the guidelines. So what hope has the committee got? And I'm told by committee members that it was cumbersome, risk management assessments, and I think the community, particularly in the villages, have an attachment to a lot of these halls and the playing grounds and the like. I'm going to defer recommendations 3 and 4 so I can get out and actually consult myself with the 355 committees to better understand the challenges. I'm not criticising those committees at all. I'm actually critical of the way it's been actioned previously, because the guidelines haven't been followed. Whether that's the fault of the staff or the committees, I don't know, but I'll get to the bottom of it. In relation to this matter, I've got considerable amendments, so can we call them up? General Manager, do you want to say anything, or we've had long discussions about this already? Pardon? Sorry.
I will say something. Now, look, this is a new era and it is a change in culture. It's a change in how the council interacts with the community. And as you say, it's not always going to be smooth, but it's very important that we listen and we talk with our community as we start to form up views, whether they be plans or strategies, and that they are respectful and open conversations, and understand that can be very challenging. And we've already had discussions around the training and learning and support that will need to be put in place for that. So I agree with the sentiments.
Look, I think we're all on the same page. It's just in relation to 1 and 2, there's really no change to what you're suggesting, excepting I don't want to build the expectation that September 24, that these reference panels will be divvied up as part of the deal, kind of thing. Let the council make that decision later on if they want to. But hopefully the community will be saying we are having genuine input and dialogue with the professional officers. Can we leave it that way? Because I think you'll find many of the people who give so freely their time will be the same people. It's amazing when you go into the community, you see the same faces, which I think is good too. So my changes. So there's no red on this one. It's just a new recommendation. So look, so people understand then, in relation to 1 and 2, it just takes out councillors after 2024 in effect. And in 1, 2 and 3, in 4, or in 5 actually, so 1, 2, 3 and 4 relate to taking the councillors out after 2024 and leaving the staff. And what I'm saying is the council wants to reintroduce themselves into the equation, they can. That's not my decision. I just hope they're working well by that stage. But number 5, whilst I don't disagree with the idea with Canyon Lee taking the lead, I did, when I read carefully through the report, have concerns as to whether the council is just as much to blame in the administration for the failures. And I just want to better understand, and to be quite frank, I didn't really understand the necessity for some of the 355 committees, with some of the matters listed. It's the first time I've seen them. So in relation to 5, Council defer recommendations relating to Section 355 committees to enable consultation with 355 committees, community facility management committees, by the administrator prior to revising the model of volunteer involvement in community facility management and any associated implementation plan. So I would move 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Could I make just one comment till that?
Later, I've already moved it.
Okay.
After I finish, you can.
Okay.
And declare that carried, Mr. Ackroyd.
I would be tempted to maintain the implementation of the bookable system at Canyon Lee. That does achieve a number of objectives in terms of the financial concerns that were outlined by the Office of Local Government. You've had the bookable system in council, purchased in council, for many, many months, and the implementation of that bookable system commences the process of bringing the financial resources directly into council, and simplifying and getting a better customer outcome through an online booking system. So I think the commencement of that trial could be implemented independently of actually going out and talking to the committees.
Well, at the end of the day, that'll be an operational matter, which I'm happy to leave to the General Manager. Okay. Look, I want to make one thing very, very clear. I am not trying to make it harder for community groups. I'm trying to make it easier. And what I've heard from community groups is it's hard. The council is here to support them in the best way we can. and let's just let me better understand before I make decisions. So, you know, if the General Manager wants to introduce bookable for all of them, I don't really care. I just want to better understand, and also I want to speak to the CFO, and I think the Risk and Audit Committee would be interested in the finances of all this. And you know, the Principal Accounting Officer for the Council has responsibilities which clearly aren't complied with under this model. Anyhow, enough said, I've already carried it. Thank you very much for your work, and I apologise for changing it so much, but that's the name of the game. Sorry. The next item is Barrow Memorial Hall, page 231.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. May. Ms. Lidgard.
Thank you, General Manager. This report provides the outcomes of the community consultation undertaken to explore community sentiment in relation to the possible renaming of Barrow Memorial Hall. At the council meeting held on the 20th of July 2022, the General Manager was requested to undertake consultation to seek feedback as to whether there was support for a change to the name of Barrow Memorial Hall. Consultation was undertaken from the 27th of July through to the 12th of August 2022. Members of the community were able to complete an online survey or send in a written submission. A total of 1,220 responses were received, with the majority of responses being provided via the online survey. We received 25 submissions. 88% of all respondents did not support the renaming of Barrow Memorial Hall, and 12% were in support. As a result of this feedback, it's recommended that the name Barrow Memorial Hall be retained.
In relation to this matter, those who made submissions, I know it's pretty hard with the survey, but have they all been advised that this matter is coming before the council tonight?
No, we haven't, unfortunately.
Can I suggest we get better at that? Because I must say, a little surprised that the people who raised this with me aren't here. I did my job. I thought it was an opportune time. If the community wanted to change, this is when you do it. I was very clear from the outset. I was dragged to the line on this. I didn't necessarily agree with it. It was up to the community, but the community has spoken loudly and clearly. In relation to item 9.2, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 231 of the business paper and declare that carried. Renwick Community Hall 9.3.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. May. To Ms. McCulloch. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, Council has recently undertaken an expression of interest for the lease space within the Renwick Community Centre. The EOI was undertaken in the context of Council ensuring that the use of the proposed lease space was consistent with the community's vision for the facility. Council received one submission during the expression period for a principal business operation of a cafe casual dining style premises. The respondent is So High Hospitality Group Proprietary Limited. The director of the company resides locally and has extensive experience in owning and running similar operations. Commencement rental offered is in line with market appraisal, and this report recommends Council enter into a lease with So High Hospitality Group for an initial term of 5 years with a 5-year option.
Thank you. The Renwick community will be ecstatic. Will we put signage up pretty soon so the community knows what's going on, or issue a press release to that area? When I first arrived, I had a public meeting and there were hundreds of people there. It surprised me, in the park across the road. And it wasn't only about this, it was about traffic problems. But this is good news for the community out there. In relation to item 9.3, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1, 2 and 3 as detailed on page 249 of the business paper and declare that carried. Next item is the draft employees dealing with council policy.
Thank you, Mr. May. Back to Ms. Lidgard.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager. This report seeks endorsement for the public exhibition of the draft former employees dealing with council policy. The draft policy seeks to establish a public register of former employees dealing with council in their capacity as consultants. A draft policy has been developed to support appropriate governance when council has dealings with former employees in their capacity as consultants, particularly in the development application area. This is to ensure these dealings are conducted in a defensible, open and transparent manner. A former employee is defined in the draft policy as a person who was a staff member of council within the previous 3 years of the adoption of this draft policy, or the policy when it's adopted. The draft policy reflects council's commitment to ensuring that any matter with a former employee who is working with council in the capacity as a consultant is only dealt with by a council staff member who did not work with that person directly. It's recommended that council endorses this draft policy for public exhibition for 28 days and submissions be invited from the public, and that a further report be brought back to council following the exhibition period.
I would have preferred 5, but we're making progress. I'm happy with 3, if that's the professional officer's recommendations. This is a matter of concern to many, many, many residents. And I've got to be careful what I say, but if you look through some of the decisions that this council has made under administration in relation to some of the matters that have happened, it's highlighted. But I'm not saying there's any corruption or anything like that. It's just all about perception. I have one concern though. I'm happy for this to go on exhibition. Pardon me. The council adopted the code. The council endorsed the draft development of assessment applications, and if after that we could put and proponent initiated planning proposals. In other words, not planning proposals initiated by the council, but by others. Got it? I think you got the wrong one. Have I got the wrong one? I apologise. I've gone to the model, but it's the same. I want the same thing in that one as well. So that council endorses the draft. Well, actually, does it need to go into this one or just the next one? This one as well? Because what do you... I apologise.
No, you're right. Could I ask the Director of Communities and Place to make a comment? Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr Administrator, I might suggest that maybe just adding an additional recommendation to both, that the policies be extended to proponent-initiated planning proposals, and that would give staff the scope to then adjust accordingly, rather than actually working out now where that wording should go in.
So,
in relation to both. Sorry,
yeah, thank you for that.
Both 9.4 and 9.5.
And are you satisfied that this will also deal with certification matters? Do you want to add that into the report? Look, it's just, look, you're the one who's going to be most exposed to this.
Yeah, I'm just Mr. Administrator, I'm just thinking through the practicalities of how I believe that I believe it would be sufficient at this stage and workable. They're the main areas of concern, is development applications and planning proposals.
But there is also certification.
Through you, Mr. May. It could be extended also similarly with that an additional, a third point to the resolution could extend certification broadly, and then we can work out the detail of the exact wording in it.
Thank you. Look, and I'm sorry you've only been here a few days, so you're probably not, or you might already be. So, Daniel, I think you're going to have to help the minute. Yeah, thank you. So we just wait a second. I want to make sure we get this right. In relation to item 9.4, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 and add the number 3 as detailed. I'm sorry, 2 becomes 3, we have a new number 2. Okay, as on the screen, I declare that carried. We can now move to the next one. I don't think you need to introduce it because it's in a similar vein. It's just, and I thank you for the work that's gone into this, but it's a sleeper in the community, I tell you. So, page 261. Okay, so in this one, if we can add okay, it's there. Okay, in relation to item 9.5, 2 becomes 3, the new number 2, the policy be extended to include proponent-initiated planning proposals and certification generally, and I declare that carried. And again, I emphasise this is all about perception. That's all it's about. We now move on to 9.6, community engagement and community strategic strategy review. Page 316.
Thank you, Mr. May. Back to Ms. Lidgard.
Thank you, General Manager. At the council meeting held on the 20th July 2022, the General Manager was requested to prepare a report for the September 2022 council meeting on how council will provide ongoing structure for the community to participate in local decision making and be engaged in projects in their place, and also to undertake a review of its community strategic plan. This report proposes a phased approach to the review of our community engagement strategy and community strategic plan, Wingecarribee 2040, and is designed to help council reconnect with the community. The objectives are to support the rebuilding of trust and confidence in decision-making processes through genuine, well-structured engagement with the community. Also to develop integrated planning and reporting documents that will guide the future of the Shire, and also to ensure that the community and its elected representatives are well positioned to undertake a comprehensive review of the community strategic plan by the 30th of June 2025. Details of the phased approach are outlined on pages 317 through to 319 of the report. The first phase will run between September 2022 and June 2023. This phase is focused on reviewing the community engagement strategy, delivering a refreshed suite of IPNR documents, and creating structures that will facilitate the implementation of a community engagement strategy. The second phase will run from August 2023 through to the local government elections in September 2024, and will focus on implementing newly created engagement structures, also implementing a co-design project to inform the current and future approaches to community engagement, resulting in a new community engagement strategy and a community engagement plan for guiding the development of Wingecarribee 2040. And also undertaking in-depth, I've just lost my notes, sorry. And also undertaking in-depth data analysis and community engagement to inform the state of our Shire report, which is required to be tabled at the second council meeting following the local government election, and also for adopting a new community engagement strategy by December 2024. The third phase will be reconfirmed in consultation with the incoming council post the September 2024 elections. It's recommended that Council endorse the phased approach for the review of the community engagement strategy and community strategic plan.
I can only say well done with this one. It's jargonless and it deals with a very complex matter of community strategic planning. Well done. And it's clear for everybody what is going to happen both during administration and laying the foundations for when the council is returned following the 2024 elections. In relation to item 9.6, I'd move the officer's recommendation outlined on page 316 of the business paper and declare that carried. Next item, the draft financial statements.
Thank you, Mr. May. Before I hand over to Council CFO, just a short introduction. Despite many challenges over the last 12 months, including floods, 3 rounds of COVID, and the need to redirect resources, additional resources, into areas such as planning, these have all been managed well by the team, and we're pleased to report a positive result at the end of the financial year. And I would like to thank the CFO and the finance team for bringing together the financial reports and working very closely with the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee as well to bring them forward to tonight's meeting. So over to you, Mr. Kuzmanowski.
Thanks, General Manager. The purpose of this report is to advise Council that draft financial statements for the year ending 30 June 2022 have been prepared by Council officers and are ready to be referred to audit. The figures presented in this report are draft and subject to audit. The attached draft financial statements include the general purpose financial reports, special purpose financial reports to disclose water and sewer funds, and special schedules which are not subject to audit. The statements have been prepared in accordance with the Australian Accounting Standards and the Code of Accounting Practice issued by the Office of Local Government. The 2021 draft financial statements saw Council bring to account approximately $170 million in revenue, $141 million in operating expenditure, $63 million in capital expenditure, and net assets of $2.16 billion for the period 1 July 2021 through to 30 June 2022. An operating surplus of $29.4 million for the period 1 July 2021 to 30 June 2022 was achieved, which was approximately $3 million above the original budget estimate. Excluding all capital revenue and asset valuation amounts, Council's operating surplus with these exclusions is $11.3 million, as reflected in Council's consolidated operating performance ratio. Some key points of the draft 21-22 financial statements include bringing into account $63 million of capital works, of which 8.4 were in-kind developer contributions, which were attributed to open space, stormwater and water and source assets. Council held $205 million cash as at 30 June 2022, which has been allocated to projects within the LTFP, excluding the working capital surplus. The financial reserves policy has been reflected in these financial statements as resolved by Council in June 2022 as a result of the Finch report. Council conducted comprehensive revaluations on its water, sewer and stormwater assets and a desktop revaluation of other assets in line of the inflationary pressures, which resulted in a net write-up of Council's assets of $222 million. A revised non-current provision was brought to account for the Welby Tip site, with the estimated provision increasing by $13.7 million to $17.3 million. Council exceeded all consolidated fund performance measures for both financial and infrastructure measures. Council's unrestricted working capital position as at 30 June 2022 is $6.48 million. This is $1.48 million above the Council resolved benchmark of $5 million. The surplus was attributable to a combination of one-off revenue amounts received during the year and minor savings in operating expenditure. The draft statements were issued to ARIC, the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, for review last week and discussed with ARIC on Monday. Feedback in the form of additional text disclosures was provided by ARIC to ensure the correct context had been incorporated in reading and interpreting the financial statements. The feedback has now been incorporated into the financial statements and are ready to be released for audit. The next steps will see the audit conducted by the Audit Office of New South Wales, the signing of the audited statements and submitting the audited financial statements to the Office of Local Government by 31 October 2021. The audited financial statements and the conduct of the audit will be presented to the Council at the November 22 Council meeting. Officers seek that the resolution be adopted.
Well done.
Thank you.
To you and the whole team in the organisation. Again, so I really look forward to when everything goes under the functions. Which I think is going to be important, but that's for another day. Can I ask that the statement you just made be incorporated into the minutes?
Yes,
Would
I
that be
can
possible?
share that with the minute
Yeah,
takers.
because that addresses the Audit and Risk Committee. So the Audit and Risk Committee didn't want to make any changes in relation to figures. It was just explanations, in effect.
That's correct, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Well, look, all I can really say is well done. I hope we're issuing a press release about this pretty quickly, and you know, not really much more I can say. Okay, in relation to item 9.7, as outlined on page 3 to 3 of the business paper, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1, 2, 3 and 4 and declare that carried. 9.8, Sherlaw Road, Robinson and Belmore Road.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. May. To Ms. McCulloch.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report relates to the acquisition of land for road purposes to resolve encroachment of the formed Sherlaw Road, Robertson upon privately owned land. Negotiations have been ongoing with the owner of 25 Sherlaw Road, with Council previously resolving to proceed with the acquisition of part of that property in 2021. As part of the negotiations with the owner of 25 Sherlaw Road, it has been identified that acquisition of part of the neighbouring property at 392 Belmore Falls Road is also required to resolve the road encroachment. Investigations have established that the cost of formation of the road within the registered road reserve would be significantly higher than the depreciated value of the existing road. This report seeks a necessary resolutions to enable Council to finalise the acquisition of Part 21 Sherlaw Road, Robertson, and to commence negotiations with the owner of 392 Belmore Falls Road, Robertson, to rectify the road encroachment.
Thank you. In effect, a housekeeping report to fix an anomaly. In relation to item 9.8, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on pages 4 to 4 and 4 to 5 of the business paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and declare that carried. The Southern Regional Livestock Exchange.
Yes, Ms. McCulloch will also speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr May, the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange is a Shire's livestock sale yard located at Berrima Road, Moss Vale, which is currently owned and operated by Council. In recent years, it was identified that improvements were required to the facility to ensure compliance with modern sale yard operating requirements. In 2019, Council was successful in securing grant funding in excess of $5 million to undertake the required improvements, the majority of which have now been completed. The upgrade and ongoing asset renewal program will bring the facility in line with industry standards and achieve National Sale Yards Quality Assurance accreditation. Now that the upgrade works are nearing completion and in line with previous reports and resolutions of Council, this report recommends that Council undertake an expression of interest to test the market to ascertain what is achievable for lease of the sale yard property.
Were the members of the former advisory committee and the stock and station agents advised that this matter is coming to the council?
Sorry, Mr May, to the Director.
Yes, through you, Mr May. Thank you, General Manager. No, they haven't been advised that this was coming to Council. They haven't actually met for more than 2 years, but I'm arranging contact to have the conversation with them during the expression of interest period.
Can we do it very quickly?
Yes.
That group is a prime example of the very thing I was talking about with the panels. It was not really a panel, but an advisory committee who were told after the fact, and the lesson hasn't been learnt, if I could put it that way, respectfully. We need to get onto them very quickly so they know what's going on and they hear it from the source. They've got nothing to be worried about, but I think it's important that we get to them pretty quickly. Okay, in relation to item 9.9, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 431 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr May. To the Director, Corporate Strategy and Resourcing.
Thank you, General Manager. Through you, Mr May. In December 2021, Council, in partnership with Business Southern Highlands and community groups, organised and delivered the inaugural Festival of Lights, which included Christmas Wonderland in Corbett Gardens, the Festival of Lights branding, decorated Christmas trees, and had lighting events in towns and organised other Christmas activities. The Festival of Lights 2021 community survey indicated that 43% of the respondents visited Christmas Wonderland in Corbett Gardens and 91% agreed that Council should provide funding for Christmas events in the Shire in the future. In 2022, Business Southern Highlands has proposed to expand the event to include additional activities such as family film nights, carols, and Angels in Our Town parade, and New Year's Eve concert and light display. Event details are still being finalised, including the use of council facilities. However, the proposed activities will create a family atmosphere and a successful event that we hope will continue on into further years.
In relation to this matter, it's linked in with the Christmas tree review, and there'll be another report coming to Council about our contributions to the villages and what they're doing, etc., etc. That's why you're waiving the fees?
Yes, that's correct. So that's the fees for the Festival of Lights, but there will be another report coming back to Council on the other village activities and the Christmas trees and the survey that was undertaken. That will be coming back to the next Ordinary Council meeting in October.
Fabulous. In relation to item 9.10, the Festival of Lights, I'd move the officer's recommendation on page 438 of the business paper 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and declare that carried. 9.12, the Revolving Energy Fund Annual Report. Oh gee, how do I miss that? Apologies. The Southern Highlands Regional Animal Shelter and SES update.
Thank you, Mr May. I'll ask the Director, Acting Director, Service Delivery and Projects to introduce this item.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to provide Council and the broader community with an update on the Southern Highlands Regional Animal Shelter and the Moss Vale Branch SES facility. Staff have undertaken numerous rounds of stakeholder engagement with animal shelter staff and volunteers, SCS staff, members and volunteers, and even undertaken a site inspection of the Kemps Creek Animal Welfare League facility, which is a premier animal shelter and home to the TV show The Doghouse. Learnings from the site visit, in-depth consideration to legislative requirements and close interaction with current staff and volunteers has led to the detailed development of the design package. In May of this year, the development application was submitted via the planning portal and a final determination from the regional planning panel is expected in October. In parallel, Council is finalising the design, specification and contractual documents, which combined with the conditions of consent from the planning panel, Council will be in a position to commence procurement of a suitable constructor in late October. Whilst the animal shelter is funded from a previous property sale relating to Franklin Street in Mittagong, the construction for the SES facility currently remains unfunded. Council continues to work with the state government to secure the funding required to build the SES facility together with the animal shelter, as numerous efficiencies and economies of scale will benefit the overall outcome. Recent natural disasters have highlighted the need for our emergency services to have fit-for-purpose facilities to best service the Shire. As such, Council will continue to forge ahead with the separable portion tender and pending the determination of the development application in October, anticipate awarding a construction contract via the last ordinary meeting of Council in December, with construction expected to commence in early 2023.
Music to my ears. Look, this is long overdue, not only for the animal shelter, but also for an appropriate the appropriate housing of very valued volunteers in the SES. So, just so I'm very clear, it's a separable tender for as one or as two.
That's correct, Mr. May. The tender will go out with the scope for both facilities. They could be awarded to one contractor, could be separated. We're going to look for value for money solutions in that regard.
That's what ratepayers expect. General Manager, we're meeting with the SES again in the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much. In relation to item 9, and that's the state SES, not the local. We've had plenty of meetings with the local people, but now we're going up higher. We've also, for the benefit of those who may be listening, we've also met with the Minister of Emergency Services about this matter. In relation to item 9.1, the Southern Highlands Regional Animal Shelter and Moss Vale Branch SES update, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 443 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. Now we can get to the revolving energy fund.
Okay, now to Mr. Arthur. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report provides an update on the achievements of Council's revolving energy fund for the 2021-22 financial year. Council established the revolving energy fund as a way to fund energy efficiency projects and to capture dollar savings from these projects to help fund future energy actions. To date, Council has implemented 11 energy projects through the revolving energy fund, and these projects save Council approximately $100,000 a year in energy costs. 7 of these projects have been fully paid back into the revolving energy fund. This year, the 4 active revolving energy fund projects have made savings of $23,573, and these savings have come from the Civic Centre Solar Project, Moss Vale Aquatic Centre LED lighting upgrade, Moss Vale Library lighting upgrade, and Moss Vale Depot Solar, in the Moss Vale Depot Solar Project. A report is provided to Council annually detailing the project savings, and recommendation is made on the transfer amount back into the revolving energy fund.
I've got a question of the CFO. Has this $23,000 been taken into account in the end of year statements?
I think it has. It was an oversight in reviewing this that confirmed that it has been transferred through the reserves policy being adopted, the nature of the funds that were, the savings that were generated have been transferred.
Thank you. In relation to item 9.12, the Revolving Energy Fund Annual Report, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 446 of the business paper and declare that carried. And Mr. Arthur, I don't see you around very often. Can I just thank you for the day we spent out talking to volunteers? I think it was well worth it. It gave me a far better appreciation of the excellent work that your team and the volunteers are doing in bushland across the Shire. Now move to 9.13, the investment report.
That's correct. To our CFO, Mr. Kuzmanowski. Thank you.
Yep, just the standard investments report, statutory report, just noting our interest returns are still trajecting well above budget. So again, we are monitoring those and looking to bring them to account in the quarterly review process. So as we've outlined in previous reports, but we've been compliant with the investment policy this month, so all ticks on that side.
By reading this, it appears you are going to get a substantial surplus over what you were predicting when the budget papers were done.
That's correct. Just noting that there are 3 separate funds, a general fund, water fund and sewer funds.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, at the end of the day, this is the ratepayers' money. So I am going to move a number 2 to this, that as part of the quarterly budget review, a list of prioritised projects that can be delivered in this financial year that may be funded for the additional working capital be provided for consideration. There's a lot to be done, and there's now some money, hopefully, to move forward on some of this stuff. So, you know, I think the expectation of the community is get on with it. Having said that, I would move 1 and the new 2 as on the screen and declare that carried. The permanent closure policy on 456, page 456.
Thank you, Mr. May. Ms. McCulloch will speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to seek Council resolution to amend Council's adopted permanent road closure and road lease policy, which outlines Council's requirements for lodgement of an application to permanently close or lease a Council public road. The policy has been updated to allow for an appropriate method of valuation to be utilised to determine the sale price for the area of closed road by independent market valuation. The policy has further been updated to allow Council to consider applications which may result in a property benefiting from a building entitlement or subdivision potential that did not previously exist, as this will be reflected in the value of the land Council is divesting of. This report recommends Council adopts the updated version of the permanent road closure and road lease policy as shown in attachment 2 to this report.
Are you saying that the former policy didn't recognise the value to the existing land that any sale would bring?
That's correct. The policy did state that where a building entitlement or subdivision potential was gained, that it wouldn't be supported.
Unbelievable. So it was in effect done on a square metre basis.
The current policy sets a value on a square metre basis of the applicant's adjoining property.
The quicker you can get on exhibition, the better. You know, you learn something new every meeting. In relation to item 9.14, sorry, General Manager.
Sorry, Mr. May, just to clarify, the recommendation is to adopt the policy and the amendment within the policy rather than exhibit the draft, given it's the nature is the change to the valuation, just for clarity.
It's a pretty substantive change, but if you're relaxed, I am. I want to move on with this to ensure that the ratepayer gets value. Yeah, that's your intent. Yeah, thank you. In relation to item 9.14, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 456 of the business paper and declare that carried. Werribee Pump Station, 9.15.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. To the Acting Director, Service and Project Delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to present the evaluation of the request for tender for the Werribee Pump Station and Balance Tank project. The project's intent is to upgrade the 1960s built Bundanoon water treatment and transfer system. Current facilities are reaching end of life, and in order to maintain reliability and the ability to efficiently transfer water to the southern villages, this critical infrastructure is in need of replacement. The tender was advertised from 21st of June 2022 to 19th July 2022. A total of 2 tender submissions were received, of which both were conforming in relation to the mandatory criteria. All tenders were considered in accordance with the Local Government Act, the regulations and Council's procurement policy. A Council procurement officer was included in the process to manage probity in procurement. Both submissions demonstrated understanding of the requirements, although one tenderer demonstrated comprehensive experience with the execution of similar projects. It is to be noted that both tender submissions are well in excess of the allocated budget. Council undertook a pre-tender estimate and, following the unfavourable submissions, commissioned a further independent quantity estimate. The independent estimate supported Council's initial pre-tender findings and suggests that the submitted prices do not represent value for money. This is most likely to be a reaction to the current volatility and price escalations in the construction market. It is therefore recommended that Council engage in negotiations as outlined in the report, in accordance with the local government regulations, in order to determine causes of pricing discrepancy and to obtain a suitable value for money outcome for this critical infrastructure.
Thanks for that. In relation to the Werribee Pump Station, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 472 of the business paper, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and declare that carried. The waste strategy.
Yes, back to the Acting Director. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to inform Council of the outcome of the procurement process for the engagement of a consultant for the development of the waste strategy and curbside collection documentation, as resolved at the June ordinary meeting of Council. Impact Environmental Proprietary Limited was the successful consultant for the combined separable portions, offering the best value for money and demonstration of significant experience across waste strategy development and the formation of collections contracts. There are numerous advantages of combining the waste strategy and curbside collection tender documentation, including the waste strategy and tender documents are closely related projects with an overlap of information. There is a tight time frame to engage a new collection contractor, and community consultation is a key component of this project and will focus on a wide range of waste issues, including the tender specification for the curbside collection contract. To avoid confusion among residents, it is best for this consultation to be planned and conducted through one consultant and via a combined project.
Look, my expectation is there's going to be a massive amount of consultation on this project, particularly with the villages and some of the other outlying areas of towns. And the opportunities available for the council to provide all ratepayers, whether you live in a village, a locality or a town, with a service. I have a concern. An organisation that resides in Port Macquarie, are you satisfied that they're equipped to undertake face-to-face consultation in this shire?
There was nothing in the submission to point otherwise, Mr. May.
So they've made ample provision for time, feet on the ground in Wingecarribee.
That's correct.
Okay, that's fabulous. Okay, in relation to item 9.6, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 478 of the business paper, 1 and 2, and declare that carried. The partnership with 4K.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Manager Assets, Mr. Robinson, will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement of the Memorandum of Understanding with the local community group, the 4K, for the purpose of delivering in partnership an inclusive play space at the David Wood playing fields. The proposal from the 4K can be summarised as that they will seek to fundraise a contribution of $220,000 to the delivery of the project. And then in recognition of this significant financial contribution, Council would in turn name the facility the David Wood Playing Fields, the 4K play space, or something similar, and a donor board would also be provided at the entrance to the facility. The play space naming and donor board do not conflict with any council policies, and it's believed that they will actually generate a positive outcome for the facility through creating a greater sense of community involvement and also community ownership of the space. The delivery of an all-inclusive play space at David Wood Playing Fields will be a valuable asset for the community and will generate a variety of recreational opportunities. It's therefore recommended that Council endorse the Memorandum of Understanding with the 4K.
Now, this is good news too. In relation to item 9.17, the partnership with 4K for inclusive play space, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 484 of the business paper and declare that carried. 9.18, the electricity market.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Chief Financial Officer will introduce this item. The Manager, Environment and Sustainability is also available to answer any more technical questions. So thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. The purpose of this report is to update Council on the procurement activity relating to Council's electricity supply and the implications of the current fluctuations within the energy market. This procurement activity has been overseen by Procurement Australasia, who are a prescribed entity under the New South Wales local government regulations. Procurement Australasia have advised that they are utilising their internal probity advisors to oversee this procurement activity. The procurement activity commenced in December 2020, where a cohort of 7 councils formed to test the electricity supply market for small and large sites and street lighting. It should be noted that since the commencement of this procurement activity, the energy market has seen large increases in retail energy prices due to a number of local and global events, external factors outside of Council's control. The environmental outcomes that could be achieved if this procurement activity proceeds will see Council's electricity sourced by 100% renewable energy and reduce the need to purchase carbon offsets in the future to meet carbon emission targets. With Council's existing contract expiring in December 2022 and the increase in energy market rates, Council will be required to review its budget allocation for the second half of the 22-23 financial year, noting that the contract won't commence till 1 January 23. The financial increases outlined in this report is not reflective of the transition of electricity supply to renewable energy, but rather a reflection of the current energy market. The most viable option is to continue participating in this Procurement Australasia procurement activity with a view to enter into a 100% renewable energy electricity supply contract. The officers seek that the resolution be adopted by Council.
This recommendation is in line with Council policy?
Correct.
In relation to our electricity bill, is in the quarterly financial statement, or is the bill going to, for the current year and the current arrangements, likely to exceed what's been estimated?
In the current year,
Yeah.
I'd say by about $200,000 pro-rating where we're going to land in the 23-24 budget.
And that will be dealt with in the quarterly statement?
Correct, yes.
Thanks very much. In relation to item 9.18, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 495 of the business paper, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and declare that carried. The resolutions update. Yeah. I've got a question. How often is it proposed to put a resolution status update to Council?
To Mr. May, we're looking at quarterly.
Thank you. In relation to item 9.12, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 501 of the business paper and declare that carried. And I presume there's no introduction to the Canberra region. I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 511 of the business paper and declare that carried. Any further business, General Manager?
Yes, Mr. May. I wish to advise of an extraordinary meeting which will be held on Tuesday the 11th of October, so it is a Tuesday rather than a Wednesday at 3:30 p.m, and the purpose of that extraordinary meeting is to present the tender evaluation process undertaken as part of the Project 2024. This is a joint tender that Wingecarribee has been undertaking with the three Macarthur councils of Wallandilly, Camden and Campbelltown, that looks at the receival, processing and disposals for waste and resource streams, and it's important that those three meetings occur concurrently. So all four councils will be meeting on the 11th of October. Thank you, Mr. May.
Can I respectfully suggest that any other item that's in the queue, bring it forward, because it helps with reading. So, okay, I declare the meeting closed. Thanks everyone for coming.